it's very easy to become bored. I think we all find ourselves there at certain points in time, and a lot of us don't know like why it is. Like, why are we bored? There's more and more to do each and every day with phones and screens and entertainment nonstop. It's way easier now to keep yourself entertained than it was 10 or 20 years ago. And even then, as a kid, I remember being bored all the time, seemingly. Like, I was always just bored and I'm bored and I'm bored. What can I do? What can I do? What can I do? And oftentimes there doesn't seem to be a cure for it. It's just like this feeling you have of just being bored, like nothing is entertaining. You don't want to do anything. You don't feel like anything. You're not hungry. You don't want to, you're not tired. You don't want to watch TV. You don't want to scroll on Instagram. You don't want to do anything. You're just like, I'm bored. I find the cure for boredom being in creation. And it's one of the hardest things to do when you're bored is go to create something, because usually when you're bored, there's also usually like kind of a laziness that comes with it where you're just like, I don't feel like doing anything. But almost all the time when I find myself in that state where I'm feeling bored and nothing is really satisfying or keeping me entertained, it's a good signal that I haven't created anything in a while. And this isn't to say that you have to be nonstop creating and you always have to do it all the time. But if I catch myself in those patterns of boredom, I realize I haven't been doing enough. I haven't been producing enough. I haven't been creative in a way of like making something or building something or taking a photo and editing it and producing, making something new. It doesn't have to be a photo. It could be a video. It could be specifically shooting video, editing video, making music, making a song, doing something, a new project around the house. Maybe you want to remodel something or build something new or get into gardening and grow a garden. There's plenty of different things you can do, but I think it's always about the creation, making something. And it's really hard to do though, because you get in that point where you just don't feel like it. And I myself get there often of just, I just don't feel like doing it. It's just, I don't want to. And that's the hardest thing to do, is things you don't want to do, because the things you want to do, you just end up doing. It's very easy to watch TV shows or movies if you want to do it, because you just do it. It's not hard. You don't have to try at all. Creating things, being productive, can be a challenge often, because it's usually the most valuable thing to do when you're in the mood that doesn't want to do it at all. And typically what I do is I just force myself through it. I just grit my teeth and I do it because I know it's like the right medicine for the situation. Sometimes you have to, with like diet and fitness and nutrition and these things, like doing the right thing isn't usually the fun, easy thing. Sitting and watching TV shows isn't hard. It's very easy. Making something, producing something is a challenge. It's a burden, but it makes you stronger. It makes you better. It gets you out of those ruts of boredom, and you start feeling better. And it typically is one of those things where once you start doing it, it's easier to keep doing it, and it feels good, and it's almost energizing, and you can just stay with that momentum and keep going. And it's when you stop that it's easy to fall back into the pattern of, well, I'll get to it later. I'll get to it later. It's no big deal. It's no big deal. And that's the thing. Forcing yourself to do it is typically all it takes to get started, which is the hardest part to do. But if you can just overcome that initial mental block and just force yourself, like will yourself, the hardest like, I don't want to do this. I want to take a nap. I want to whatever you think is going to cure your boredom. It's not it. Create something, do something, be productive, make something. It will solve it. And the best thing is once you start doing it, you'll want to do more of it, because then you'll crave that feeling and that satisfaction. And then all the things that were entertaining before were really just a distraction. Most of those things that keep you occupied don't actually fix boredom. If you're sitting in traffic listening to a podcast, you're still kind of in a state of being bored. You're just distracted from it because you're listening to someone else talk about something, and it's helpful because you can just kind of tune out. Or if you're in, the waiting room at like a doctor's office or something, and you're just scrolling on your phone, you're still bored, but you're distracted from it. You're not consciously aware of it the same way you would be if you're just sitting there all by yourself, staring at a blank wall. That's when the boredom hits you right in the face. But, the podcast, the shows, the scrolling on social media, the constant, texting and whatnot, typically is just a distraction from the state of boredom. It takes being productive to actually get you out of it. And then those other things feel kind of like not so important. You don't need to do it. It's okay if you miss an episode of your show, or you miss, an episode of the podcast, or you don't check Instagram for the day. If you're creating and doing something and making something, you don't need to. Where before what felt really important isn't anymore. Same thing is true with video games. It's you're consuming it, you're taking it in as entertainment. It's distracting you from the boredom, but it's not actually fixing it. It's not making you entertained. There's plenty of times where I've played video games, 8 hours straight, and by the end of it, it's like, I'm so freaking bored. Like, this video game is boring. Like, everything's just awful, miserable. Like, you feel sick almost, because you've just been consuming this like distraction rather than building, making, creating, doing something productive. And that's hard. It's not an easy thing to do. Sometimes you just literally can't, because you're sitting in traffic, or you're in a doctor's office, or you just don't have time, and so you're just going to play a video game. That's totally fine. There's nothing wrong with it. But just be aware that when you find yourself in those states of boredom, it's probably because of the things you're doing, the habits you've created, the activities you're participating in, and there's an easy fix. Just go create something.